Leroy got Norma Jean pregnant when they were both in high school. To Norma Jean's mother, Mabel, this was a disgrace. The two were married at the age of 18, and their son Randy was born a few months later. When Randy died in the back seat of the car, a victim of sudden infant death syndrome at the age of 4 months, his parents were watching the movie Dr. Strangelove at a drive-in. Mabel said fate was mocking her. Afterwards, Leroy became a long-haul truck driver. Now, 15 years later, Leroy has been injured in an accident. 3 months out of the hospital, he's still doing physical therapy, drawing disability, and passing the time, making things from craft kits. A miniature log cabin, string art, macrame, needlepoint. Leroy has never fulfilled his promise to build his wife a new home, and now he wants to build one with logs. Norma Jean is doing weight training. Leroy wants to connect with her, but doesn't know what she feels about him. Now that he will no longer be away driving his truck, he senses that they should start their marriage afresh, and that it might help to talk about their baby who died. But he doesn't know how. He buys Norma Jean an electric organ for Christmas and smokes pot while she plays. She's the still pretty woman that he loves. Leroy's pot dealer is around the age Leroy's son would have been. Mabel, Norma Jean's mother, is at the house when Leroy returns from making his run for his pot. Mabel belittles him for working on needlepoint, and when he mentions the log house, Norma Jean says she doesn't want one. Whereas he and Norma Jean used to hang out when he was home from the road, she's gone to work at the drugstore by the time he wakes up. He notices details about her behavior that he had overlooked before. One day, she cries when her mother catches her smoking, and he tells her that it would be worse if Mabel caught him smoking pot. Mabel tells a story about a dachshund killing a baby while the baby's mother was in the next room. This upsets Norma Jean on purpose, she thinks. Mabel urges Leroy to take Norma Jean to Shiloh, the Civil War battlefield where Mabel went on her honeymoon. But when they get there, Norma Jean tells Leroy she wants to leave him. Having Leroy home all the time makes her feel like she's 18 again. Leroy understands that he doesn't know what to do to build a real marriage. Building a log house won't build his marriage. This narrative unfolds in a chronological sequence in the present tense. So there is a use of the past tense when the narrator fills us in on how they got married when they were young and how the baby died. When something is recollected, then things move into the past tense, but otherwise the story unfolds in the present tense. The point of view is a third person, limited, omniscient narrator. We're inside Leroy's head. We don't really know whether Mabel meant to upset her daughter when she told the story about the dachshund. We don't really know that Norma Jean is planning to leave Leroy until she tells him. So we've got this limited, omniscient point of view. The characters are interesting in this story. Leroy means the king. At the same time, he seems like an immature youngster for someone who's 33 or 34. He's spending his time putting together craft kits. He's intimidated by the plans for the log house. He's still getting high on the couch. He's rather inarticulate when he looks at his wife and thinks of her as still being pretty. He likes the way her curls look like pencil shavings. So it sounds almost like 19-year-old Sammy thinking that Queenie's chest looked like a sheet of metal slanting in the sun. Leroy can't remember why he thinks it would be a good idea for them to get reacquainted. Maybe this is partly because he's smoking pot. And when they go to Shiloh, he feels like a boy on a date with an older girl. On page 587, when she is explaining to him what she does all day in the drugstore and explains complexion care, creams, toners, and moisturizers, he is happily thinking about axle grease and diesel fuel. And he presumes that they're connecting because they both use petroleum products in their work. We don't know her as well because we aren't able to access her thoughts. But obviously she's aware of wanting to develop herself. She's taking these courses at the community college, developing herself physically, but also developing herself by taking the writing class. She's angry at her mother's disrespect, coming into the house without knocking. She's impatient with Leroy's plans and assumptions about her. And then at the end of the story, where she and Leroy finally have a conversation about their relationship, she says that she feels like her mother and her husband are bothering her all the time. She won't leave me alone. You won't leave me alone. She says that she feels like she's 18 again, and you get a sense of how Norma Jean must have felt living in her mother's house with her boyfriend pestering her for sex all the time, and then she does in fact get pregnant. Her mother going on and on like a tragedy queen about the fact that she's pregnant, and then her mother going on and on like a tragedy queen about the baby dying, as if everything is about her mother. And you sense that Norma Jean just wants to feel grown up and in charge of her own life and her own decisions. One hopes that when she quits smoking, which she has by the end of the story, that she's done that not because she feels like she has to give in to her mother, but because she decided that she wanted to quit smoking. Mabel seems pretty mixed up. She gives them bedding, she wants to send them on a second honeymoon, but she's so eager to tell this gruesome story of a dead baby and a neglectful mother that she doesn't even say hello to her daughter as soon as the vacuum cleaner switches off. She's coming out with this story. We get the sense that she has not really worked out her feelings of being the mother of a teenager who gets pregnant, has a wedding, has a baby, and then loses the baby all within a year. The setting is interesting. We have the rented house that Norma Jean and Leroy live in that doesn't seem like a home. We have subdivisions with fancy houses where a log home would not belong. We have the battlefield. It doesn't look like a golf course and it doesn't look like a battlefield. It's a park with monuments everywhere, but also trails and ravines and forests. So we have all of these settings, none of which is exactly what they're supposed to be. And then the central metaphor of the story, the log home that Leroy wants to make for his wife, which is not what she wants, is a metaphor for the marriage that he wants to build but hasn't been able to connect with her enough to negotiate so that it would work for both of them.